Hi, it's Chris from Driver Training Limited. We've been audit registered driving instructor trainers for almost 20 years now. And in this video, we're going to show you an insight to the ADI Part 1 theory test. And there's a course that's available online at adionline.co.uk to help you pass your theory test and set you up for success in the ADI Part 2 and ADI Part 3 tests that you're going to face in the future. So if you go to our theory website, drivertrainingtheory.co.uk, and you go to the ADI Band 4 theory test, now this covers publications and instructional techniques. Now, for a lot of trainees, because they don't have any experience of training people, these questions make no real sense and they very often get them wrong. Well, for just $6.95, you can get 2 months access where we as audit trainers go through every question in Band 4 and help you understand it. In today's video, we're going to focus on the first 10 and give you an insight into what this course is really like. So we go to the ADI Band 4, we press start, and we're going to go through the questions. So first of all, typically, how does aging affect people's driving ability? Now at the top here, you'll see that it says explanation. So if you're ever unsure of a question, find out the answer first. As people age, their reactions tend to slow. So older people have slower reactions. Is that right? Yes, it is. Why do motorcyclists often wear bright clothing? Well, I'd presume that's because bright colours are very popular these days. No, I'm joking. It's obviously, hopefully, we just know that from our general driving, it just makes it easier for other road users to see them. The fluorescent colours makes it easier to see. Is that the right answer? Yes, it is. 2 for 2 so far. How much verbal instruction, question 3, is needed to help a pupil attain a good standard of driving? Now, here it can be slightly confusing because we might think, well, it's a constant amount regardless of how good they are. Well, when you're teaching someone, the better they get, the quieter you should become because they start to understand it and start to do it. You might think, was it more as the test date approaches? Well, remember, think of the literal driving test. It's 40 minutes pretty much in silence. So the way to tell if somebody is test standard is the fact that you should be really quiet and not saying anything. So is the answer none then once they've reached test standard? Well, there are very few people who are perfect. So although we want to make it minimal, there may still be times when we need to jump in. So the correct answer is just enough to ensure they understand what's required. So when they're first driving, they're going to need a lot of instruction. As they get better, that's going to drop off. So just enough to ensure they understand. And that is indeed our answer. Question 4. When should you assess a learner driver's progress? Is it the end of the lessons? Is it if they do something well? Well, actually, it's continuously because there might be things they're getting better at, but there's also things perhaps they need to improve on. So it's a dialogue. Do you notice it's not just instruction? You have to have two-way dialogue and include feedback as well. Click that Yeah, we're right. Well done, mate. Question 5. What should you do if you have to use the dual controls? Well, that means you either have to hit the brake, perhaps grab the wheel. Realistically, stepping in, dual controls, you wouldn't want to say nothing because the pupil's obviously aware of what's happened. In fact, that would start to drain their confidence. They'd think, why are they using the dual controls and not telling me? And also, if we say nothing and expect the pupil to understand, we're not finding out what the real problem is. Did they see that car that you had to hit the brakes for? Did they see they were about to turn too sharply or not enough? And that's why, if we explain that we're going to cover it at the end, that's not really good enough either, because it means we don't give them chance to practice. So the actual answer is ask the pupil if they understand why it was necessary to use them. So back there, Chris, do you know why I had to hit the brake? Do you know why I had to say stop? Do you know why I had to grab the wheel? If they don't, fine, explain it to them. But if they do, so why? Did you know why I had to use the brake then? Yeah, that car was coming. Okay, so why did we choose to go? I thought I could get across. Okay, do you have a reference point? Do you have a way of knowing if you have enough gap to go or not? Oh no. Okay, so we'll sit and discuss that for a moment, and I'll provide one. We're getting to the bottom of what the real cause is. So the first thing we want to do is help them understand, if they know or understand why it was necessary to use them. Question 6. What should you teach your pupils to do when they're learning to turn the vehicle around in the road? Is it look over the left or the right shoulder? Is it to check their mirrors? Well, in fact, it's a mixture of all of those. Because you're turning the vehicle around what used to be called 3-point turn, which it never was, because if it was a narrow road, you could do it in 4 or 5 and it wouldn't be a fail. But it's now referred to as a turn in the road. So if you're turning the vehicle around to face the other way, you're going to have vehicles coming from both sides. You're going to have pedestrians, cyclists. So you've got to keep looking around for, in effect, 360-degree observation. Yay! Well done, mate. So, question 7. What should you do if a pupil drives the rear wheels over the curb when they turn left? Would we demonstrate that this was caused by steering the wheel late? No, because you wouldn't go over the curb by turning late. You'd be more likely to go over the center white line. Tell them that this fault can be avoided by swinging out to the right. One of my pet hates with drivers. I'm sure they think they're in 40-foot lorries. You know, even if you're in an SUV or a Range Rover, if you learn to turn the steering wheel, you can get round that corner very easily without swinging out to the right. Do we explain that the rear wheels cut in when turning left? Now, this is a potential answer, but it's not the right answer. First of all, we would want to ask them to explain why they think that happened. So there, Chris, our back wheel went up the pavement or over the curb. Do you know why that happened? Yeah, I turned too early. Yeah, I turned too much. They know. So why did we do it at that point? Or they could go, no, don't have a clue. So let's see if this is the right answer. Yes. We always want to get the pupil involved and see if they know the answer before we presume we know the answer. We need to get that client-centered learning. Question 8. What should you do if a pupil stops making progress in their lesson? Should you slow the pace down, conclude they have learning difficulties and refer them to a specialist ADI, make the pupil have extra lessons to overcome the difficulty? Unless we know what the difficulty is, how can we help them overcome it? What we need to do is find out what's blocking the progress. Is the subject that we've gone on to a bit too much at this stage? Do they not get realistically what we require, which could be our fault for not explaining? Oh, they've got to know what meeting traffic is. A lot of trainee driving instructors can't explain what meeting traffic is. How can we expect a learner to? So they might be having problems, but what's the cause of the problem? So what you need to do is discuss it, get that client-centered learning going. What should you do if a pupil you're instructing fails to make the progress you were expecting? Should you make them go on to more advanced driving situations where if we're going to make things harder and they're already struggling, do we really think that's going to help? Should we continue to repeat the same exercise until the pupil gets it right? Again, if someone's struggling with something, unless you know what the cause is, they're just going to keep struggling. Should we just be patient, which seems good, and continue the well-tried methods that are working with other pupils? Well, again, if you're using them and they're not working, there's obviously something wrong somewhere. So how many times perhaps has someone tried explaining something to you and you go, nope, don't get it. So they'll explain it another way. Nope, don't get it. Then they'll explain it a third way and you go, get it. Why didn't you say that to begin with? Well, they probably did. So that's the thing. If we just use the well-tried methods for others, we're not treating that person as an individual. We're just going, well, it worked with them, it should work with you. And that, as a principle, does not work. So our answer would be, ask the pupil, is there a particular problem that's holding them back? Seem to be struggling with this a little bit, Chris. Is there anything that you're unsure of? Yeah. I don't get what meeting traffic is. I don't get what judging gaps actually means. How do I do that? It's fine. Good question. Let's discuss it. In this section, question 10. You're teaching a pupil to move away on a downhill gradient. What advice would you give them about the gears? Should we use the highest available gear? Well, if you're in a 5, 6, 7 speed car, would going into gear 7 be apt for a slight gradient? Unless you're coming off the side of Snowdon, then probably not. Would we use a lower gear than normal? Well, actually, you tend to use a slightly higher one because gravity is already going to build up your speed. So if you start to roll and bring the clutch up in first gear, you'll find it just pulls you back. Should we use the lowest available gear? Well, we've just kind of answered that and said no. So the correct answer is use an appropriate gear for the gradient. If it's a slight one, very slight, you might choose first. You might look at it and think, well, actually, second for this one. Perhaps it's such a steep hill, you're thinking, well, actually, by the time we're moving, third gear in this car would cope with that. Because again, the more gears your car has, so if you're in a 6-speed or a 7-speed, it might well be that third gear is appropriate for that particular gradient. This is what the courses are: Band 1, Band 2, Band 3, Band 4. Different subjects, but we go through the questions, we explain them. There's a 75% fail rate on the ADI Part 1. And that's a lot of money to be wasting. But also with doing our courses on adionline.co.uk, $6.95 for 2 months access. You get to watch a band of your choice, the questions within it, and then you get to know them. But more importantly, this sets you up for the part 2 and the stuff we're covering now, phrases like client-centered learning, discussing things, teaching hints and tips. This is going to put you way in front of everyone else when it comes to your ADI Part 3. So my name's Chris from Driver Training Limited. Remember, teach well, drive safely, and we'll see you in our next video.